Hello, YouTube. Reg Reed. Thank you for joining me. What I'd like to talk about in this video is why I do not believe in the death penalty. Now, this is a very controversial topic. There are passionate opinions on both sides of the issue. If you disagree with me, I'm A-OK with it because I'm not trying to tell you what you have to believe. I'm just telling you what I believe and why I believe it. Now, the death penalty was instituted back in the Old Testament under the Mosaic Law, and there were a variety, many different sins and transgressions that warranted the death penalty. And the general principle was uh, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. So if you took the life of someone else, you would be put to death. In Matthew chapter 5, in his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, referring back to that old idea. But then he says, but I say, do not resist an evildoer. If he hits you on one cheek, turn him the other cheek. So here's this brand new principle of pacifism that is being brought to the forefront. In John chapter 8, there was a woman caught in adultery. And adultery was one of those sins that warranted the death penalty. And they wanted to stone her, and they brought her to Jesus. And what did Jesus do? He stopped that execution in its tracks. And he said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone at her. So what did he do? He offered grace and mercy to this woman. He did tell her, go and sin no more. But the idea was, I'm giving you another chance. I'm going to give you grace. I'm going to give you mercy. And that is the recurring theme of the New Testament. So I believe that the death penalty is incompatible with the New Testament. You see, one thing we know about God in the New Testament is he wants to offer grace, mercy, forgiveness, redemption to people. And I believe that anybody can be saved. Jeffrey Dahmer was a notorious serial killer, and he did some acts that I don't want to talk about and probably can't talk about over YouTube, but just the most vile, disgusting things that a person could do to another person or their body. He got saved in prison. He was later murdered by a fellow inmate. But see, anybody can be saved, anybody can be redeemed. That's just how powerful the redemption is, the blood of Christ, if you will. And you know, I see these bumper stickers about being pro-life, and there's one bumper sticker that says, "All life is sacred, from conception to natural death." Well, execution, putting somebody to death, is not a natural death. So I don't understand how somebody can claim to be pro-life and be against things like voluntary euthanasia and that type of thing if they support the death penalty. Um, it just seems to be incompatible. It seems to be almost hypocritical. Now, I am not, please make no mistake, I am not trying to excuse crimes. I am not trying to excuse criminals or downplay their crimes. I absolutely believe that they should be locked up for life. But I believe that God can still save them, just like he did for Jeffrey Dahmer. Another concern that I have about the death penalty is the possibility of somebody being wrongfully put to death that was innocent. You know, the idea of DNA evidence is relatively new and wasn't a thing um, several decades ago. And so I wonder how many people have been wrongfully put to death, basically murdered, that were innocent. One is way too many. If you live in a jurisdiction that has the death penalty, that execution is done in your name. The Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill." You know, I heard an interesting quote from somebody. I can't remember who it was, but I read it or heard it a while back, and it said, "Forgive us our trespasses as we lethally inject those who trespass against us. And of course, that was a bit of a parody on the Lord's Prayer. But the principle is, we want forgiveness, so we need to forgive others. And God, in the New Testament, and even in the writings of Paul, he talks about this idea of not seeking vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. So not trying to get even with somebody, not trying to vindicate or what's the word I'm looking for? Not seeking retribution, but rather leaving it to God, who is the fairest judge of them all. Let him deal with it. They will stand and account for those sins that they've committed and those crimes that they've committed. And so I just believe that the death penalty is incompatible with the grace and mercy that is taught in the New Testament, throughout the New Testament. And so that is why I oppose the death penalty. If you disagree with me, again, I am okay with that. But I'm just sharing what I believe and why I believe it. So until next time, God bless.